He made a promise to his mother. It was a simple promise, the kind a young boy makes. A boy who loves his mom more than anything. He saw the joy in her eyes when they went to church. He felt it in her hand when she held his. That little church in Tupelo, Mississippi was everything. It was hot, it was loud, and it was full of music. The music was different. It wasn't quiet or polite, it was raw. People stomped their feet, they clapped their hands. They shouted and cried. The music moved them. It moved him. He would watch the singers. They closed their eyes and let the music take over. They weren't performing. They were testifying. He and his mother, Gladys, were close, inseparable. They were poor. They lived in a tiny two-room house his father built, but they had their faith. And they had the music. They would listen to the radio, they'd hear the gospel quartets, the Blackwood Brothers, the Statesmen. Their harmonies were perfect. Their passion was real. But Gladys loved that music. It lifted her up. It gave her hope when times were hard. And times were often hard. Her son saw that. He saw how the songs could change her whole spirit. He saw the peace it brought her. And in his young heart, a promise formed. He didn't say it in a big, formal way. It was probably just a quiet moment between them. Maybe they were walking home from church. Maybe they were listening to the radio on the porch. But he told her. He said, "Mama, one day I'm going to sing gospel. I'm going to be one of them singers. And the whole world is going to hear it." He wanted to give her that feeling. The feeling the music gave her. He wanted to be the one to create it for her. That was the promise, to sing the music she loved, to sing it with all his heart, and to make her proud. Then things started to change, fast. They moved to Memphis. He got a guitar. He started singing a different kind of music, a new kind of music, a mix of everything he had ever heard. The country, the blues, and yes, the gospel. It all swirled together inside him. And when it came out, it was explosive. He went to a little studio called Sun Records. He was just a kid trying to make a record for his mom. And he ended up changing the world. Suddenly he wasn't just Gladys's boy anymore. He was a rock and roll star. The world went crazy. Girls screamed. Parents worried. The music was wild. His moves were wilder. He was the king. He had everything. The money, the cars, the big house, Graceland. He was living a life he could never have imagined back in that little shack in Tupelo. But the promise was still there. It was buried under the gold records in the movie contracts. But it was there. He never stopped loving gospel music. It was his anchor. After the sold-out shows, after the screaming stopped, he would find a piano. He'd gather his band, the Jordanaires, or his friends, and they would sing. Not for an audience, not for money, just for themselves. They would sing gospel songs all night long. Until the sun came up. That was his real music. That was his comfort. In a world that was becoming increasingly strange and lonely, that music was home. It was his connection to his mother. It was his connection to that little boy in the church. The fame was a monster. It was wonderful and terrible. It gave him everything, and it took so much. It took his privacy. It took his normalcy. And it put a strain on his relationship with Gladys. She was so proud of him, but she was also scared for him. This world he lived in was so different from theirs. Then the unthinkable happened. Gladys got sick. She died in 1958. He was just 23. He was at the height of his fame, a soldier in the army, and his world fell apart. The person he did everything for was gone. The center of his universe had vanished. The promise he made to her was no longer something he would do for her one day. It became a debt, a memorial, a way to keep her close. Fulfilling it was more important than ever. He had to do it. For her memory. For himself. The years passed. The army. The movies. Hollywood had him on a leash. He made movie after movie. The songs were forgettable. The scripts were worse. He felt like a joke. He was creatively starved. The rebel king had been tamed and put in a cage. He was lost. He needed to get back to what was real. In the mid-1960s, he decided to put his foot down. He was tired of the silly movie soundtracks. He wanted to record something that mattered. Something that came from his soul. He told his manager, the Colonel, and the record label, RCA, what he wanted to do. He wanted to make a gospel album. There was resistance. Gospel music didn't sell like rock and roll. It wasn't commercial, but he insisted. This wasn't about sales. This was about something else. This was personal. This was for Gladys. So in May of 1966, he walked into RCA's Studio B in Nashville. This was his sanctuary. He knew this room. He felt comfortable here. But this session felt different. It was heavier, more significant. He had a specific song in mind. It was a hymn that had been around for a while based on a Swedish poem. It wasn't one of the fast, hand-clapping gospel songs he sometimes sang. This one was different. It was majestic. It started quiet, almost like a prayer, and it built and built and built into something enormous, a powerful declaration of faith. It was a challenging song. It required incredible vocal range and control. You had to start with a gentle reverence and end with a thunderous roar. It was a journey, and he was ready to take it. The studio was quiet, the musicians were ready. He stood at the microphone. He closed his eyes. And for a moment, he wasn't the king of rock and roll. He wasn't a movie star. He was just that little boy from Tupelo, standing in church next to his mother. He sang the first verse. His voice was soft, full of awe. He was telling a story about looking at the world, at the stars, at the power of nature, and feeling overwhelmed by its greatness. Well, you could hear the sincerity. This wasn't an act. Then the music started to swell. The backup singers came in, their voices like a church choir. His own voice began to climb. He was no longer just observing. He was feeling it. The power, the majesty. It was filling him up. He thought about his mother. He thought about her faith. He thought about everything she had given him. He poured all of it into the song. The love, the loss, the gratitude, the pain. It all came out in his voice. The song reached its climax. The final section, this was the moment, the part where the singer has to give everything they have. He took a deep breath, and he let it go. His voice soared. It was a sound of pure power and emotion. It filled the studio. It seemed to shake the very walls. It was a sound that could only come from a place deep inside, a place of true belief. He held the final note, a triumphant, earth-shattering declaration. When it was over, there was silence in the studio. Just for a second. The musicians, the engineers, everyone was stunned. They had just witnessed something more than a recording. It was a testimony. It was a prayer. It was the fulfillment of a promise made a lifetime ago. He had done it. He had sung for his mother. The album was released, and that song became its centerpiece. People heard it, and they felt what the people in that studio felt. They felt his soul. It won him his first Grammy Award, not for rock and roll, not for the music that made him famous, but for gospel, for the music of his heart. It must have felt like a validation, a sign that he had done the right thing, that Gladys would have been proud. From that day on, the song became a huge part of his life. He performed it in his live shows. In the 1970s, when he was back on stage, the conquering hero in the white jumpsuit, that song was often the highlight of the concert. Imagine the scene. Las Vegas, a showroom packed with people from all over the world. They came to see the legend, to hear the hits. He would sing about blue suede shoes and hound dogs. He would drive the crowd wild. But then, in the middle of all the chaos and spectacle, he would pause. The mood would shift. The band would start the slow, reverent introduction, and he would begin to sing that hymn. And the entire room would fall silent. People would cry. It didn't matter what they believed or where they came from. They were connected by the sheer power and honesty of his voice. In that moment, he wasn't just an entertainer. He was a messenger. He was sharing the deepest part of himself. He sang it for millions on his historic Aloha from Hawaii satellite broadcast. A global audience. The whole world. Just like he had promised his mom. There he was in his iconic jumpsuit, sweating under the lights, singing this powerful hymn to a billion people. He had fulfilled his promise on the biggest stage imaginable. As his life became more complicated, as he struggled with health problems and the pressures of his immense fame, that song remained his anchor. It was a moment in his show where he could be completely, unashamedly himself. It was a direct line back to that little boy, to his mother, to the simple faith that had been the foundation of his entire life. It was more than just a song. It was the story of his life, the little boy who loved his mother, the promise he made to her, the long and winding road of fame that took him so far away, and the powerful return to the music that was always his true home. He recorded many songs, hundreds of them, but that one was different. It was the sound of a promise kept, the sound of a son's love for his mother. The song was How Great Thou Art.